These are the areas that will grow the most.
We're talking the 12 most undervalued areas of 2026.
Norlane and Corio and all these kinds of areas that used to be low socio are the areas that typically grow the most.
Why?
Because we knew eventually this type of stuff is going to be way more expensive.
No joke, it's true. Great prices.
Together with property investor and founder of House Finder, Simon Loo. In this episode, we're unpacking some of the most undervalued areas of 2026 a lot of other people are going to overlook. This is an info-packed chat that is easier to listen to.
My top picks for 2026.
You said that with like some real hand gestures there.
Can you see it? I don't know.
If you want to check out the full list of areas, you can find the download below.
I want to talk about number 1, population growth. Number 2, affordability. Number 3,
if you've been wanting to get your hands on a list of areas that a $50 million investor is backing for 2026, you've come to the right place. My name's Todd Sloan. This is the Pizza and Property Podcast. Let's jump straight into this chat with Simon Loo. Simon Loo.
Todd Sloan.
Ready to talk areas, man?
Every single year we do this.
Man, and every single year it blows up. I think the last time it was actually towards the start of 25.
Mm-hmm.
It was around $400,000, basically looking at where can you actually still get a deal.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was like 40,000 views, 50,000 views across all platforms.
Wow. It's amazing. I prefer not to revisit it. You
don't watch your episodes.
I don't watch anything I do. I don't listen to anything I do. I get my wife, Lynn, my beautiful wife, to listen to it because just
in case.
Quality control purposes.
Yeah. Just in case we're not like dubbing another voice over you.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I try to ignore it, but somehow it works. So
Man,
I guess that's why we keep doing it.
Well, and it's why I wanted to do this one with you again, because this is the kind of episode where everyone gets a bit. I get a bit. I really learn a lot from these. Mm-hmm. And I want to understand that we're not going to be unpacking the entire list.
Nope.
But we're going to be unpacking the next, 5, 6?
We'll talk about a few things, yeah.
Okay,
a few
cool.
areas, a few suburbs.
Is there anything that you want to set the stage with before we start?
Yes. The narrative doesn't change year on year, right? As far as I can remember, as far as I've been for 40 years that I've been on this earth, the overarching fundamentals of growth and where we pick these suburbs and the drivers and all that kind of stuff stays the same. And the other thing I want to address is just because we pick a certain suburb, it doesn't mean that suburb is the only suburb that's going to grow,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
When I talk about suburb, I mean areas. So if we talk about a particular suburb, there might be within a certain
Like an LGA?
LGA or a certain area, rising tide lifts all boats. If that suburb goes up, so are the surrounding stuff, right? So I don't want people to think, I've picked that particular suburb. That means we're completely going to ignore the next suburb down. If there is a good deal or a good property in that next suburb, go for it, 100%. The fundamentals don't change in that area. Does that make sense? Or
Makes perfect sense.
yeah.
And it's something that I think you and I have a lot as far as like off-air conversations when it comes to if it's a deal, it's a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't get caught up on like every single, if you've got a 57-point checklist, but 54 of them are ticked and they're all the really important ones, don't walk by.
That's a very good point, because in any LGA, I wouldn't say in any LGA, but in many LGAs, there's like a newer suburb or an older suburb, right? And land size is always a massive sort of, debate or like a
decision point.
Yeah, a decision point for a lot of investors. And they're like, it has to be minimum 400 or 500 square meters. If it's 399, I'm not going to buy it, right? But you have to look at the area as a whole. And also sometimes like the suburb itself, some suburbs, you're not going to find 500 square meter blocks, especially if they're newer suburbs or they were built maybe 15, 20 years ago and all that kind of stuff. You're only going to get 300-400 square meters. That doesn't mean they're bad deals. That doesn't mean they're not going to grow. But the next suburb down might be an older suburb with 600-700 square meters. Again, it'd be ridiculous to buy a 400 square meter block in that suburb. But if you were to buy in the older suburb or if you buy in the newer suburb, they're both going to grow, right? So I don't want to say it's kind of like just let your guard down and go for anything, but you have to be very objective and go, okay, cool. Yes, I am looking at a newer house on a smaller block, using that example. So I need to analyze that deal based on all the other newer houses that are also in smaller blocks, or maybe that suburb character itself.
There is a real line between buying anything and letting the minute details get in your way, though. Like, as far as you were just saying, I don't want to come across like I'm saying just to buy anything. To me, there's absolutely no part of me that takes it that way. It's not about just to spray and pray everything will make money, because that's not how it works either.
What I've found is people or investors that are very specific on the details of a particular house or a particular suburb, or whether it's land size or whether it's walk to the station, whether it's a certain kilometer distance from the CBD, the underlying thing that they have is fear. They actually don't want to invest, or maybe they don't want to invest in a foreign area or that particular area because there is that doubt in the back of their mind as to whether it is going to be the next performing area, or whether it's going to perform, or whether it's going to gentrify and all that kind of stuff. And all along I've been saying these are the particular areas, given certain fundamentals, that you need to focus on, because these are the areas that will grow the most. But it's hard to commit to them before you see the data or the trends or whatever you want to call it. By the time you see the data and the growth stats done, it's already, the ship has sailed. You know what I mean? Like the growth has happened. Being unemotional, as much as I keep saying it time and time again, every single episode we talk about being unemotional, focusing on numbers, it's a skill set that can only be perfected over time.
Just in case you guys are thinking, get to the suburbs, we will, trust me. But I just actually want to dig a little bit deeper into this, because I actually think that if you're listening right now and there's a part of you that actually resonates with what Simon's saying about that fear and getting the comfort in the details, I want to actually ask, what's a big thing? Because in the early days, you must have experienced it yourself. We look for that thing that is solid to go, I'm making the right choice, because the fear of making the wrong choice, when it's literally one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make at the beginning stages of building a portfolio, it's a scary thing.
Yeah,
and that's
100%.
Totally normal.
100%.
How do you get through that?
And the example that you mentioned, I'm not going to mention the suburb, but the example you mentioned just before we started this recording is actually a very important one, right? You mentioned you did a recording where you talked about a suburb where it was clearly the next in line suburb, or the suburb that's about to grow, right? And you published this episode or this recording, and a lot of feedback that you got from that recording was the fact that, there's so much traffic and so much this and that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Where are these people going? Why is there traffic, right?
Because there's lots of people.
There's lots of people going to work. This particular area, again, not naming the suburb, but it's in Melbourne. People are, I guess the naysayers are saying, there's so much traffic, it's a bad place to be. But I'm thinking, wait, hold on. Previously, there was no traffic, and now there is traffic. That's a sign of a new demographic, a new type of buyer that's a professional, they work in the city, they have that traffic because they're driving to work. Maybe they're of a high income as well. For me, that's a good sign, not a bad sign. Most people will be like, there's so much traffic, I'm not going to buy there. But for me, that's like, okay, cool. That's a sign that something's changing there. Why is there new traffic? And then sooner or later, hopefully, if you have a decent government, the new traffic will be like picked up. They'll be like, let's open new roads. Let's open new transport links. And then that's when it really starts to steamroll. But by the time that happens, you're done. You missed it, right? The growth is gone. So you have to get in, I wouldn't say way before that happens, but maybe just before that happens.
You ever seen the documentary / movie called The Men Who Built America?
No.
It's good. I'll send it to you. But there's this thing on Vanderbilt. He's the guy that built all the
I
lines.
know Vanderbilt, yeah.
And one of the I think, I can't actually remember who it was, but basically said that Vanderbilt's big thing, like his skill set, and I think this is any investor, entrepreneur, anyone that's a bigger thinker that can actually build something big, is the ability to see around the corner. The ability to look and actually look further than what anyone else is. Because if you look at everything for what it is and you make decisions based on what it is instead of what it could be, you leave a lot on the table.
Exactly. I think it's your ability to, it's a cliche, ignore your emotions, right? But think about it, wherever you live, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, regional areas, it doesn't matter. Think about what used to be rubbish or a bad quote unquote area 10, 15 years ago, right?
Exactly where Bianca and I live. My land used to be a hole.
And think about where it is now. Now, to be able to commit yourself mentally to buy into that area 15 years ago when all you've ever known was how rubbish it was, how many drugs and unemployment and low socio, low income, Centrelink, whatever it is, right? It would have been such a massive leap of faith, ignoring every sense, everything that you have, right? But now that you can see that it's a new area.
The proof is there, so is the price.
It's changed.
Yeah.
But then you're paying 3 times, 4 times more than what you could have got it for, right? So you've missed the boat. So what we're talking about now, in my opinion, is those next in line up and coming suburbs, right? So that's the basis for what I think is going to be my top picks for 2026.
You said that with like some real hand gestures there for anyone on.
Yeah.
Can
you see it? I don't know.
All right, man. Well, why don't we jump into number one? And because really summarizing everything that you've just said there might be some areas in this list, whether you download the full list or if you're just listening to the episode, that you might look at and go, what? Really? Why? That's why. Because it's not about the area that already looks fun, sexy, cool, and everything's done. It's about picking the areas that are going that way. So, man, why don't we jump into the very first, is Suburb, LGA? How are we breaking this up?
First of all, I want to talk about Perth.
Okay.
2 years ago, so many buyers, investors, so-called property experts were like, you know what Perth has done? It's been growing for 3-4 years. It's doubled, tripled in value.
Yeah, I see where this is going.
I'm not going to say anything, right? The stats are there. The data is there. Everyone that loves data, you can look back in the past 12 months as of right now into 2025, and you can see exactly how well Perth has continued to perform after all these people have been spruiking. Time to get out, right? And we are on the opposite camp. We've been buying and promoting or, you know, championing Perth all this time, and we've made a lot of money out of it, right? Not only in terms of the business that we're in, but also
the actual capital
growth.
actual
capital growth.
Yeah.
Right. And the fundamentals has always been why? Number one, population growth, consistent. Number two, affordability. Number three, the scarcity factor.
Talk to me about that.
Scarcity factor for me is something like a suburb that has certain elements that you cannot achieve, you cannot replicate anywhere else, right?
Okay.
So everyone knows by now Perth is characterized by amazing beaches up and down the coast. Expensive area, cheap area, new area, old area. You're pretty close proximity to a really nice beach.
It's a very linear city.
Yes, correct. 5 years ago, you could buy a 3 or 4 bedroom house for $400,000 in walking distance to a beach, and we're about 30, 40 minutes of the city, right? That for me was ridiculous. And that's why we started buying in some of these areas, because we knew eventually this type of stuff is going to be way more expensive than $300,000 or $400,000. Now, fast forward to now, a lot of these areas are $600,000-$700,000. I still think it's still scarce, because think about where in Australia can you still find those elements. Walk to the beach, 4-bedroom house, 30, 40 minutes to a major capital city where 99% of humans can actually find employment, right? So think about your average IT or your average finance worker working in like a big corporate office. They can take the train home, stroll to the beach, take a dip, take a swim, have a surf, whatever it is. And for $700,000, it's so affordable. It's so rare. You can't get that anywhere else.
Where's the line? Because obviously Perth is going to be the first pick. Where is that line though when you're like, actually, you know what, guys? It's done now.
When these houses are millions of dollars. Quite literally.
How many? Like when it crosses the million?
Look, the average income in Australia, 100,000.
Yeah.
6 times their income. Is it 6 times? I don't even know right now. Like
6 times
the
DTI.
lending. Yeah, similar, right?
If you're looking at the big four.
Imagine if you had double that income, so 200 grand in a household, so about 1.2, 1.4. I think once these houses start to reach about 1.5, 1.4, 1.5 million, that's when you start to get to a little bit of what I call a glass ceiling, meaning that the majority of average income earners can't actually afford that anymore as much as they like. But at that point, the suburb isn't dead. People will start to compromise. They'll go from houses to townhouses to villas, and then maybe to units and apartments and so on. So there is such a longevity in terms of the growth, but not only the transition of that particular suburb. Do you know what I mean?
So you're not looking at 600,000-700,000 thinking, no, it's got like 800 to 900 to go. You're looking at 600,000-700,000 going, we're still getting started.
We're still getting started. And most people are fixated on what's happened. So they look at $600,000-$700,000 and they go, oh man, I could have bought that house for $400,000, $300,000 5 years ago. Well, you could have, but you didn't. Why didn't you?
You also could have bought it for $50,000.
Yeah, exactly. Because 4 or 5 years ago, as most people were analyzing these areas, all they would have seen was how bad it was and how new it was, and how there wasn't the train line and all this kind of stuff, right? But now that it's kind of proven itself, you're like, oh, this is a good place to buy in now. Well, you missed out on a lot of it. So yeah, so that's the purpose of the conversation, right? to find these next areas.
Exactly. And I feel like the foundation can't be laid any thicker than that.
Yeah.
Why don't we go into area number 1?
So the very first area is the north side of Perth. Yanchep, Alkimos, Butler, that entire north side pocket. Right. It's grown a lot.
Tell me about it, because this is already sounding familiar as far as top picks are concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, if you look on a map, it's up to Eglinton, which is one suburb up from Yanchep. You look like you're at the very sort of outer reaches of civilization, right? But that's not necessarily a bad thing in Perth, because I've said this before. One of the characteristics of Perth is that the people that choose or want to live there want to live in relative seclusion, but they also want the access and the lifestyle of like a big capital city. Actually, part of the reason why I think a lot of people are moving out to Perth, because it's got that, you know, combination, I guess you can say. You can't really get that in most areas unless you're paying millions and millions of dollars. Like in Sydney, to get that same kind of lifestyle, you'd be on the northern beaches, you know, paying $3, $4, $5, $6 million for a house, similar to Yanchep and these areas where you can get a house still for around that $700-ish thousand mark, right? And they've just, you know, the beaches there, apparently based on reviews or whatever you want to call it, you know, apparently they're kind of world class. They're, you know, very highly regarded even in Western Australia. So a lot of people that are from Perth itself or live in other parts of Perth, they go up to Yanchep and they go up to these areas to go to the beach specifically. Okay. Right? So it's got, I guess, like a desirability factor. They just did the new metro, the rail extension that was completed in July 2024.
Tell me more about that, the rail extension.
Well, it's just a train line. Well, what do you want to know? What about what? How many seats it has? Like at the bus, at the train stop, or what? What do you want to know?
What's the driver's name?
I don't know. You can get there by train. That's the difference now.
I was going for commute time. Like, is it cutting it? Is it like how much they spent? Like what?
Look, it's anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes.
Okay.
Right? Depending on the time of day, depending on whether they're doing rail works. I don't know, man.
And depending if Gary's driving.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows, right? But it's accessible. That's the main thing.
Okay.
But what I've continuously noticed in terms of doing what we do is that just a constant change in demographics. And I think a lot of this leads into the prices. Look, it's gone up a lot in the past 4 to 5 years, right? And that's naturally pushed out a lot of the, I guess you can say, the lower income demographic that maybe used to occupy areas like Yanchep and so on. But the people that are there now and they're buying in there, aside from the investors, they're all relatively high income people. You know, maybe they're fresh to Perth. Maybe they're coming from Sydney and they're like, you know what? How is this possible? 700-800 grand for a house near the beach, like walking distance to the beach, and still I can catch the train down to Perth and it might take 30, 40 minutes, whatever it is. Like in Sydney, that would be like a dream. Like wouldn't even, like, it's not possible ever, right? So I think all these people, and you know, a lot of people knock the fact that a lot of these Yancheps and Eglintons, they're fairly new areas. So they go, oh, you know, there's land releases, there's blah, blah, blah. The houses are so small. Kind of stuff. I know for a fact that those elements are what a lot of these owner occupiers are after. They're specifically looking for new areas, like a nice sort of quote unquote Pleasantville surroundings. You know, they want ease. They want something that they can be proud to call home. They don't want, like, you know, old rundown houses everywhere and this and that. So I think that actually plays into the demographic that you want to help contribute to the growth, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. So looking at an extra land release obviously is something that you need to consider as an investor. But just like anything, if you're going to look at any data points, looking at one in isolation or one maybe a good thing, bad thing in isolation isn't enough to actually make an area go the right way or the wrong way.
See, that's a big thing that we talk about a lot as well. Like, you know, land release areas, it's something that a lot of people, for whatever reason, have drilled in their minds that more land release equals more supply equals less growth or less demand. It's completely untrue. It can be true if that land release was in some regional random area where there isn't that consistent owner-occupied demand. But in a major capital city, land release areas means two things. Number one, fresh people. Fresh, new demographics, like I just said, very high income, professionals, blah, 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 filtering in, gentrifying, building the area as a whole. And the second thing is build costs, right? To build a brand new house in Yanchep or any of these land release areas today is around about double what it used to cost just 5 or 6 years ago.
That's what I'm thinking. Is this similar to Melbourne where you're almost getting the house for free in some cases? Like
you're getting the house for free or you're getting the land for free. But the difference, the tangible difference between a 5 or 10-year-old house versus a brand new one after it's been built is intangible, right? Especially after it's been lived in.
Yeah.
So if you rocked up to a 10-year-old house versus a house that was built, I don't know, a year ago, you'd look at it and go, yeah, I guess, okay, fine, maybe a bit newer, but in terms of like specs and size and even the fittings and fixtures, like it's fairly similar. Exactly. But one of them costs 50% less, right? So what happens is if you're an investor buying the older version, you're kind of getting a free ride based on the fact that all these people are paying a premium for all these brand new builds because it's just because they're paying double the price of what it costs, your one costs to build, you like automatically pushes that price up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, man. You kind of think of it like a car. It's like you're going for like some kind of a higher end car that's 300 grand, or you can buy it that's 4 years old and all of a sudden you're picking it up for 100 grand. It's like a fraction of the cost. You know more about cars and you're already smirking at me like I'm saying that wrong.
Yeah, but that's very bad.
How is that not? I feel like that's totally fitting. It's like you've got the new house with the fresh new car smell, but a house, or you can get something that's been around for a little bit. It's okay, maybe it doesn't work.
That helps you feel better. That's fine. we can roll with that analogy. No problems.
It's literally the same thing.
But coming back to it, look, Yanchep, Alkmaar, Butler, even up to Eglinton, I think that area still has a lot of room to grow. And by the way, if you research these areas, you're going to find a lot of houses that appear to be like villas, right? We call those row houses. Okay. Right? It's just the developer making the maximum use of land, especially land that's very close to the beach.
So not a townhouse?
They're not. They're kind of attached. They're kind of like a modern day terrace. Okay. Right? Some of them have shared common walls. One of the main characteristics with these row houses is the fact that the garage is typically in like a little laneway behind the main road, or the main street, I should say. Don't dismiss those properties.
Why?
They grow, they're high in demand, they're a notch cheaper than like a standard house with a normal garage at the front and all that kind of stuff. But once you're it's kind of like a terrace anywhere else, like in Sydney or Melbourne or any of these sort of more established cities, I guess, or suburbs. They're still extremely high in demand, and they've got maybe even like a certain character to them that I think in time they'll be quite desirable.
Okay. Talk to me about the actual numbers of the area, like as far as yield, growth. What's the detail?
Look, as of right now, to buy a house in that kind of area, like a proper house, without paying strata or body corporate, you're looking around about the 700-ish mark.
700.
If you're getting a good deal. If you're not, you might be paying 800, 850, 750, I don't know. But around 700, 750, if you buy a house for around 700, depending on how far you're away from the beaches and the amenities, you might be paying $700. You might be getting $700 a week off the bat.
Still around a 5% yield.
Still around the 5% yield, and I believe it's going to keep going up. Perth has gone through a little bit of a lull period in 2025 where rents, whether you're in a beach area, whether you're in a bad area, good area, it just went a bit stagnant.
Why?
Right? And this is characteristic of any city that goes through a huge amount of growth, both price and rents, in a very short amount of time. It's literally just people catching up to the new reality, right? So imagine if you live in Perth and 5 years ago you were paying $400 a week for whatever house you're living in, and today you're paying $700 a week. That's a massive jump, right? Yeah. Almost 100%.
It's huge.
At that point, most people are just going to be like, you know what, this is getting a bit out of hand now. We need to take a bit of a breather at least, right? Let's just hold everything. That's kind of what's happened. I wouldn't say this whole year, but I would say from anywhere from April to maybe October, November, we've noticed a bit of a slowdown, a bit of a slump in terms of rental demand and rental prices. And some of our investors and basically everybody had to take a little bit of a rental hit temporarily. But I think that's going to start picking up again. Coming back to the same thing as I said before, even if you're paying $700 a week, $800 a week for a seaside, beachside house within proximity to the city, extremely affordable. Compare that to any established city like Sydney or whatever, you're paying thousands of dollars a week easily.
I feel like that used to be easy in Adelaide. It's not anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Adelaide's gone through a lot of change and transition as well, which we'll talk about soon. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think people just look for the best case scenario in terms of where they want to settle down or where they want to start a family. And that's part of the reason why these areas are changing and moving quite rapidly.
And whilst Perth's on the list a couple of times, we're also going to be talking about, like Simon just said, South Australia, Adelaide, and also we're going to be going over to Melbourne as well. But mate, is there anything else you wanted to talk about with Yanchep, Atlas, Butler, Alkmaar rather?
Look, the 1 year growth rate is about 10% in terms of population.
See, that is, hold on, population, or we're talking capital growth?
Population.
That's huge.
In my opinion, population growth is way more important than housing price growth. Population growth means that suddenly a lot of humans going, you know what, I love this area. I actually want to live there. I feel it's safe. I feel it's beautiful. I feel I want to live there. And that is actually what's going to push prices up considerably high. That emotional demand as a fundamental. And look, apparently by 2028, the forecast is an average 5 year growth rate of 5% as well, right? So I think just that constant stream of humans wanting to live in the area is going to maintain the prices.
That is so many people. Is the population growth for Australia is what is it like? Something like 2% a year, 1.8%, something along those lines.
I really don't know, to be honest.
But we're talking.
I do know, but it's just so many numbers.
But I mean, it's not like we're talking like it's 10% more. It's like a little bit like we're talking going up by like multiples.
Yeah. And another quick stat as well, if you want to talk about stats, the city of Wanneroo, which is where all these suburbs is a part of, like the LGA, there were 890 residential dwellings approved to be built in the financial year of 25-26, right? And bearing in mind, like a lot of people look at these dwellings being built as like a bad thing. But think about the motives and the people behind building these properties. They're families, they're owner occupiers. They're building a house for them to live in, right? By and large. And I think that's important to note because once again, they're kind of recognizing this area as like, okay, cool, it's a really nice area to be in. And they're spending a lot of money to build these houses. 800 grand with all the fancy inclusions, maybe even up to $1 million, inclusive or maybe even plus the cost of the land itself. So all these hordes of people, 890 people potentially, are building houses that are so much higher in price than what you can pick up like a 5 or 10-year-old property today. Do you know what I mean? And eventually I think all these sort of lower price properties are going to be naturally just pulled back up.
So coming back to the fact that building isn't always a bad thing. It's like generally speaking, if there's a whole bunch of extra land around the place, it's generally not a sign of growth of good. But to actually just completely write it off, as you're explaining here, this is more of an investment of people going, I want to actually back this area. And this is one of the reasons you're looking at this going, this is a place to potentially look into for some serious growth in 26.
Yes, 100%.
All right, going to the next area. Where are we looking, man?
The city of Onkaparinga. That kind of sounds like we're in Canada.
You pronounced that perfectly.
Did I?
Yeah. It's actually an Aboriginal word. And I remember there was the CEO of Onkaparinga changed it to Onka.
Okay.
Without actually consulting anyone first. And there was this massive uproar years ago. And they very quickly changed it back.
Right. Okay.
But anyway,
well, clearly I'm
fact.
not Aboriginal.
No.
I can't tell already. So I have to ask, what does Onkaparinga actually mean?
Dude, look at me. Do I look Aboriginal as well? Like,
but you're the one that said it was Aboriginal. So I would hope that you would know why.
No, I'm not. If anyone does know, please let us know. But no, I'm not aware.
All right, we'll chat GPT later. But city of Onkaparinga, it's a massive area, as you know. This is your backyard. Probably that's where you grew up, right?
Very much, yes.
Yeah?
Literally.
You told me lots of stories about you doing growing up things.
Oh, man, I had a very colourful past. I don't hide that. Yeah.
No, it's look, it's for a very long time this area has been considered a little bit of a once again a bit of a sort of lower socio, a little bit more of a rundown, a little bit of a backwards area, as part of Adelaide. I think it's kind of like the south side of Playford.
It's huge as well.
Yeah.
Like there are some pockets that are definitely nicer, but some that are pretty rough.
Yeah, but there's lots of pockets now, especially beachside, that are quite premium, quite expensive, right? Like for example, Christie's Beach, right? I think Christie's Beach, like it's interesting. When I was first buying properties for myself about 20 years ago, Christie's Beach was considered like
It was dirty.
It wasn't even dirty. It was considered not even part of Adelaide.
Kind of, yeah. Like you could holiday down at Port Noarlunga, like Porties, which is literally next to Christie's. But Christie's was like the dirtier side of Porties.
Okay, cool. Now, I think this will ruffle up some feathers because whenever a lot of people think affordable, up and coming, next in line suburbs or next in line areas in Adelaide, they naturally gravitate towards Playford. Salisbury, Elizabeth, Monopara, all those kinds of areas. But I actually think there's quite a lot of ignored value in the city of Onka.
Paringa.
Because in some of these areas, you can still buy a 3 or 4 bedroom house for around that 700, 750 mark, right? Which falls directly into the realms of being super affordable, whether you earn a high income or even a middle income or even a lower income. But once again, the fundamentals, you're very close to the beach. I mean, Morphett Vale, as an example, you're 25 kilometers to the city, right? Very, very close. And you're also within, in most cases, I mean, Morphett Vale, you've got the east side, west side, all that kind of stuff, but you're still relatively about 5 minutes away from Christie's Beach or the beachfront itself. Yeah.
Depends on what pocket, like you said, but yeah.
Once again, scarcity factor, right? But also it's kind of like it's almost inevitable that these areas are going to be more premium just purely for those, the geographic nature of where these places are, right? So yeah, I'm a big fan of this area, obviously pending that we're getting good deals and pending that the numbers stack up, because it is also an area where I think recently there was a property that made headlines in the news and all this kind of stuff in Morphettvale that sold for I think $1 million or something like that. So yeah, just bearing in mind that you have to get a really good deal, or you have to be very disciplined about, what to go for and what not to go for, because there are some people paying some silly prices for properties in this area already, which again for me is another sign that they're starting to be a lot more emotional or emotions attached to this particular pocket, which hasn't used to be. A lot of people up until 2026 were choosing to live in this area for affordability, right? But I think now it's more, we're starting to see signs, or we're clearly seeing signs that people are choosing to live here.
The shift is happening.
Their shift is happening, right? And I don't like, if you knew nothing about Australia, if you even knew nothing about Adelaide itself, you kind of look at the area itself and go, okay, cool. Why is it not more expensive? It should be $1 million suburb already. It's got all the fundamentals. Let's ignore the stigma. Let's ignore the fact of the history and all this kind of stuff. But why isn't it? Like, once again, I think the proximity to the beach, the lifestyle, all that kind of stuff that comes with it. There's a lot of developments happening in the area. There's a lot of new transport connections happening. I believe Onka Heights, they're rezoning around 2,000 homes, or they're rezoning an area to build 2,000 new homes, that kind of stuff.
And when the north-south connector kicks in as well, then getting into the city is going to be even quicker. Again, I think they've just got the tunnel boring machines about to go in now, like sort of start of 26.
Yeah, I think you drive them outside of pizza and property.
That's
kind of like your second job.
Yeah.
It's necessary. I get it. I've been there.
They're from Germany, I like to feel at home.
But I think one other point is it's quite close to McLaren Vale, right, where I get my Shiraz from.
You got a favourite cellar door?
Not really. To be honest, kind of what's available on the wine list.
you checked out D'Arenberg yet? The Cube?
What's that?
Oh, dude, you got to go.
Really?
You do like wine, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Next time you're down with a bit more time with Lynn, we'll go to the Cube together. It is incredible.
What is it?
It's like the Mad Hatter and Willy Wonka got together on a construction project.
Is it safe?
It's really cool. It's by the winery D'Arenberg. It's an experience.
I trust you. I trust you. I hope. I hope. Okay, cool. So it's close to that. Close to the Cube.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's apparently like a growth sign. But population growth as well. Look, it's been quite steady. And this is one of the reasons why we've been targeting, or why I've earmarked Adelaide as a whole as going to, not as a whole, but like as an entirety to grow soon. And I think it's going to happen in the next year, because Adelaide is the last big city that's yet to experience a huge amount of migration.
You and I were talking about this off air just before, and I completely agree. And I think if you're an Adelaidean, you're probably like, no, whatever. The roads have gotten busier. It's like, nah, seriously, you were absolutely right.
Yeah.
We don't. And you look at like the ABS forecast, apparently we don't have this huge influx of people coming. But I feel like that's going to be one of the things that actually changes that and makes everyone start funneling in.
I think it's inevitable. And if you look at why Brisbane started growing, it was exactly the same thing. It's just huge amounts of humans deciding almost overnight, you know what, I'm over Sydney. I'm over how expensive it is. I'm over the traffic. I'm over the fact that it's just full of competition and just a lot of hustle and bustle and a lot of stress and this and that. So, okay, cool. What's the next best thing? Oh, Brisbane's pretty cool. Good weather. Can still get a job, whatever industry you're in. And then that started pumping. And then Perth happened. And that's actually part of the reason why so many people are moving to Perth, because of these Yanchep and all these kinds of areas where you can still live in the beach, be close to the city, and you earn 100K, you get a decent lifestyle. Adelaide is the last place that you can achieve those kinds of things.
I feel like you want to say frontier.
Last frontier, last hurrah, whatever you want to call it, right? Because, the only thing missing in Adelaide are humans. Everything is here.
There's a couple of us.
There's a few, yeah. I think they're starting to get a bit moldy.
Maybe if they stay underground for as long as you and I have today.
Yeah. That's I tread carefully whenever I come down here to do these podcasts. But honestly, like, joking aside, like when I first started coming to Adelaide to do these podcasts, because I never actually come to Adelaide before then, I was kind of like, oh man, it's so quiet, it sucks.
I reckon I could find your first text message the first time you landed. You were not happy.
I wasn't happy, right? And then the more time I spend here, and by the way, it's not like days or weeks or even months on end. It's literally just a couple of days every now and then. I'm like, you know what? There's something here that I think it kind of speaks to the whole sort of, why do people want to live in Australia, right? good weather, good food. Like the food is incredible.
And the coffee.
I don't know.
I just
don't
spent
really
a few
drink coffee.
Oh, I just spent a few weeks in Europe and I love it. It's beautiful, and the culture, the history, they can't do coffee.
Yeah.
Like it's just we do amazing coffee. We have amazing food. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And it's just the laid backness, like the chill factor. But, you know, I think, look, I mean, rightly or wrongly, I think that's going to change. I think there will be a lot of people that pick up on the fact that, okay, this is a great place to live, but coming to the fundamentals of why humans decide to live anywhere, there's jobs here. You know, the IT companies are here, the engineering companies are here, you've got tourism, you've got all the infrastructure and the government sector, and, you know, whatever you do in life, whatever your background is, you can rock up to Adelaide pretty much immediately and get a decent paying job. And I think that is always the foundation for mass migration, mass population growth. And it's a little bit of a, I guess, like a hidden gem, or I guess you can say like a dark horse for now. But once that tide turns, I think it's going to turn very rapidly. And when people move here, they're going to be like, man, where am I going to settle down? You know, I've got $1 million to spend on a house. You know, wow, Morford Vale. You know, wow, you know, City of Onka. You know, I can buy like a house near the beach. You know, I can buy, and I'm only within 25 Ks of the city. Down the road, I've got all these amazing wineries and all these lifestyle factors. That's the reason why these areas are going to start pumping.
Tell me more about some of the stats, because obviously we can't talk stats on Onkaparinga quite the same way, or maybe you've got a few prepped, but is there like a suburb, like a Morford Vale, a Christie's Beach you want to isolate?
So, I mean, let's use Morford Vale as an example. I think it's a good example because it's one of those suburbs where you're kind of one suburb away from the beach, like a beachside suburb, right? But if you look at some of the suburbs that are right near the beach, or right next to the beach, like Christie's Beach or Hallett Cove, the difference in median between Morford Vale and these next door suburbs is really night and day, right? And this brings me back to why I decided to buy in Logan once upon a time, to why I started buying in parts of Perth once upon a time. It's because I noticed that these suburbs that were less established had a massive median price difference compared to some of the ones that were just currently going through that gentrification, that kind of change. So the median price in Morford Vale at the moment is around $730,000, right? Vacancy rate is less than 1%, which is extremely tight. The change in terms of median isn't that spectacular. It's around about the 2% mark in the past 3 months. But for me, that's actually a good sign.
It's still growing.
It's growing, but it's not like rapidly growing as yet, right? And it's one of those factors that I like to look at when I choose an area to buy in, because I kind of want to buy in before those numbers look ridiculous. But with that in mind, in the past sort of 2 to 3 years, right, Morford Vale has grown a lot, but it's grown in line with what Adelaide has grown as a whole.
The rising tide.
Right? It's a bit of a rising tide effect. But the fact that it's still affordable, you know, like I think a lot of people make the mistake of saying or thinking that, oh, just because an area has grown a lot in the past 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, that the growth is finished. But I think what actually drives continuous growth, especially in where Australia is at the moment as a whole, which is a lot of migration, a lot of population growth, but almost no or very limited housing, means that it's just more of a scarcity factor.
Well, and Adelaide's very similar to Perth in that sense of it's a linear city. You can't go very far west. We got the beach.
Yeah.
And whilst you can go up into the hills and go east, not really the same way, and it becomes very impractical to build on like such a slope, or more so a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
So there is going to be that squeeze a little bit more here.
The other thing about Adelaide is, like, if you talk about the hills or anything surrounding it, like north or south, you've got just amazing, beautiful scenery, beautiful, amazing wineries, right? It's not like a Sydney. Like, the more west you go, the less desirable it gets. It actually gets more pretty, more beautiful.
Yeah.
And then coincidentally, some of these lower socio or up-and-coming suburbs or areas just happen to be right near or right next to these really pretty areas. So I think the fact that there are all these wineries and, I guess, scenic parts of Adelaide being directly, or tourism areas, I guess you could say, right next to these up and coming areas is actually going to help it grow more as well.
You know, I think a part of it is as well, like locals in Adelaide, I think it's an appreciation factor. You don't realize it, but then when someone from out of town comes and it's like, wait a second, you got this and that's how much it costs?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a big part of why it's actually moved so much as well.
I think we're creeping into the whole sort of socio-dynamics of why people choose certain areas to live in, but I think it actually has a big impact on demand demand. You know, in this day and age, I think people are looking to get away from the busyness, from the stress, from the lifestyle, or the traffic and all the kind of stuff that you're accustomed to. But they still need that practicality, I guess you can say. And Adelaide is really, really all about that right now. So I think in due course, that will change completely. The other thing going for Adelaide as a whole as well is the fact that it's still considered a regional city.
So if you are migrating here, doesn't that mean you get like extra points or
If
something?
you're fresh to Australia and you're looking for a place to settle down, or maybe like the fastest route to get your permanent residency, a lot of people are coming to Adelaide because you can come here once again, and whatever you do from overseas, you can, let's say, get a decent job, as decent as you can. You stay here for 2 years and it's almost automatically permanent residency. You know, a lot of people are thinking, oh, you know, once you get your PR, you're just going to move somewhere else. Most people don't move. They're established, they're familiar, they actually enjoy it here. And I think that's a big part of the reason why that's going to contribute to the growth of Adelaide as a whole.
Is there anything else you want to say about Adelaide before we move on to the next area? Because like, I'm looking at the clock as well, man. We're already 2 areas deep and we're already like approaching like sort of 50-ish minutes.
Well, look, the city of Playford is obvious. Another area that's pretty much on the north side, directly opposite to the city of Onka.
If you got the choice, north or south, investor hat on, where are you picking?
Base it on the deal.
So
You can't have
just coming
north
down.
go up without the south going up. You can't have south go up without the north going up.
So you're not dividing these as like
No,
this is better?
Never. I've never done that anywhere in this, wherever I've bought. Right, it's just really based on the numbers, based on the deal, based on whether whatever you buy, if you can buy more afterwards. I think that's actually more important than trying to get every little tiny detail right.
I completely agree. You're pausing for like some dramatic response from me, but I've got nothing. Like you're absolutely right.
That's
If
the exact
this one,
response that I was after.
yeah, well, if this one can't get you into the next one, why are you doing it?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Another location, Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
And this one's been talked about a lot in recent months, recent weeks, and that's the Geelong area.
Well, and it's technically not Melbourne, but realistically,
It's pretty much Melbourne.
Yeah.
And it's going to be amalgamated at some point in time. Kind of like the Gold Coast to Brisbane. You know,
Yeah.
20 years ago, Gold Coast and Brisbane were completely different. And now a lot of people who live in the Gold Coast commute to Brisbane and vice versa. In terms of people who live in Brisbane, they go to the Gold Coast on the weekend and this and that. So I think Geelong is pretty much going to be a part of Melbourne fairly soon. When I first started investing once upon a time, back in the day, I sound really old now, but you know, I remember areas like Norlane and Corio, which you would consider as like the worst or the lowest socio parts of Geelong. You know, houses there were like 200 grand, you know, and people shunned away from it because it had that stigma. It had that sort of, oh, I don't want to buy there because it's too much unemployment and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, geographically, you know, you're close to the water. If you look at the opposite part of the bay in Melbourne, you're at areas like Seaford. You know, you're at areas like Sorrento even, like at the very tip. And those areas are crazy expensive. So why shouldn't Geelong be in due course, right? Once it shakes off its sort of the roughness, I guess you can say.
talk to me about in due course. You talking 5 years, 20 years? Like what kind of
Well, Melbourne is a little bit of a polarizing area as a whole because I did a recording about this couple of months ago, right? Like, you know, it's got a lot of government intervention at the moment that's stalling growth or that's impacting growth. It's impacting demand. It's making a lot of people unhappy, this and that. So I think it's going to, a lot of that needs to change first. But I think Melbourne is, and Geelong and so on, you really kind of get the sense that you're at the bottom. You really can't go further south. It's affordable. It's relatively, you know, for what it is, like Melbourne, whichever way you look at it, is considered like a bit of a world-class city, you know, similarly on par with Sydney.
what is? You go overseas, the first thing the cab driver asks you is, you from Melbourne or Sydney?
Melbourne.
Yeah, Melbourne.
Yeah, is what they say. But yeah, look, I mean, I think it's a matter of time, right? And Norlane and Corio and all these kinds of areas that used to be low socio, time and time again, are the areas that typically grow the most because they have the most room to grow, put it that way.
Talk to me about the yield though, because if this one can't get you into that one, don't buy it. But let's be frank about it. The yields are not amazing still. They're not terrible, but they're not 5 and 6%.
Look, about 4% if you're buying anything with land underneath it. So like houses, townhouses or villas or something like that. Maybe 4.5% if you're lucky. So it's not the greatest, but compared to the rest of Melbourne, actually not too bad. You know, most of Melbourne are looking at around 3 to 4% at the moment. So I think it's definitely a little bit better. And look, you know, despite all the stuff that's been happening in Melbourne in the past 5 or 6 years, between 2016 and 2024, the Geelong LGA population has grown by about 56,000 people, which is equivalent to around 25% growth.
That is so much.
Yeah, that's a lot of people that need houses, right? So, and I can't really see that trend stopping either.
I'm pretty sure as far as forecasts are concerned, it's actually forecast to be one of the biggest population growths in the country over the next kind of 5-10 years.
Yeah.
Like we did an episode on this recently. It's set.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not hard to see why, right? Once again, it just comes down to shaking the stigma.
So why is it then it's got such a stigma? Because you're looking at it, and this is essentially what you're buying, is the bet that stigma is going to be moved down the road, moved on, and that what you're going to be left with is a nice coastal town that people actually want to live in and are prepared to pay a premium for. But at the moment, that's not what it is. Why is that stigma going to be pushed along?
Necessity, purely. Once Melbourne moves, all the areas that are just affordable, pushing around $1 million, they're going to be unaffordable almost overnight, right? And then all the people that can't afford it anymore just goes further and further out west. And then at some point, they're going to be like, you know what? These areas like Geelong, they're affordable, but you're not sacrificing the lifestyle either of being near water, of being near those, I guess, like that sort of coastal lifestyle sort of feel.
So I've had conversations with a few people recently about this, and they're talking about Geelong and kind of going, well, wait a second. If I'm spending like 5 to 6 in Geelong, why don't I just go into the western suburb?
5 to 6 what? Billion?
No, 5 to 600,000.
Oh, right. Okay.
5 to 600,000. Why aren't I just going into the western suburbs or the northern suburbs?
I think you answered your own question. $500,000 to $600,000 for a house near the water, and in proximity to the city as well.
But that's the question.
Yeah.
Why don't I choose proximity to the city? Because if I'm going into, I don't know, like a Deer Park, if you're going out to Dallas, to wherever it is, you're obviously a lot closer than Geelong.
Look, and by the way, I think Deer Park and Dallas and all those, Melton, even Broadmeadows, they're going to grow, right? They're probably going to grow equally as much from a percentage-wise as Geelong will or can once Melbourne starts moving. But obviously you don't have near the water. That's a big component.
So it's really the water.
Yes, and also I think the 50% of it is like the stigma, the low socio stigma in these areas are a lot more ingrained. Like anyone who mentions Melton or Broadmeadows immediately is kind of like thinking like a Mount Druitt in Sydney. Like they're really thinking about like the lower socio-economic area. And that's a hard thing to shake, even if you get a lot of, people, higher income people starting to filter in. So it's just got one extra hurdle to have to jump, right? But again, for me, if I was an investor, I wouldn't care.
If you're an investor?
Yeah. If I was investing in Melbourne, let's say, I wouldn't care if it was in Geelong or Melton or Broadmeadows. If the numbers stack up, if the deal stacks up, I would buy any of them. In fact, I would probably be owning multiple properties in all these areas at some point in time anyway.
So as much as it's always coming back to, is it a deal? Look at the deal in isolation. You're choosing Geelong over these others at the moment, more so for its ability for a better gentrification. Like the wheel is turning because of a few of the other aspects, just geographically, as far as the beach is concerned, shaking that stigma, but it's not to say these other areas aren't going to grow.
Correct.
Gotcha.
But you forced me to pick a few spots, so here I am.
It's my job. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Every time I call you and you're like, oh, Todd, what areas? What?
Yeah, I know. I'm going to come up with this stuff now.
Talk to me about numbers before we move on. Norlane, Corio. I know you're not the data guy, but I want to talk a little bit about the stats.
First of all, it's Corio.
I do that every time as well. Yeah, all right. Corio, Norlane.
Oh, good. Let's get it right first. Todd.
Talk to me about the numbers.
Look, the median price is around 520 for Corio. Norlane's about 475. And if you look at most of the other Geelong suburbs, you're about 50 to 100K less below the other medians. So it's a significant difference.
475.
Yeah, 475 for Norlane. Personally, I'm not a big fan of medians because, you take into account 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, older houses, newer houses. And it's not a very accurate determination of what the value of an average house or a median house should actually be in a particular suburb. But you cannot ignore the fact that the median currently for these two suburbs is significantly lower than the other suburbs in Geelong.
You a big fan of always buying below it, or do you look past that?
No, you have to just look at the value of whatever you're looking at. So if we're looking at a 3-bed house in Norlane, compare it to all your 3-bedders. If you're looking at a 4-bedroom house in Norlane, compare it to all the 4-bedders. If you're looking at an older house, compare it to the older houses. If you're looking at a newer house, compare it to the newer houses. So you just have to compare apples and apples always because everything has a value. You know, even the worst house on the worst streets, the oldest house compared to the nicest house to the nicest street. If Norlane grows, everything's going to grow.
What's the scummiest house you've ever bought? Either for yourself or like in business, whatever. Something that you would just be like, no, like this is not.
I've bought quite a few of them.
But I want to caveat though, before you answer, but that it's shot the lights out performance-wise.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like I remember buying a house in Crestmead.
So it's in Logan for anyone listening at home.
Yeah, and it was a complete dump. And I knew it was a complete dump. And I rented it out anyway. And then I knew the tenant, well, I didn't know this, but the tenant that rented it, unsurprisingly, trashed it, completely ruined everything. And
how much did you buy that for?
$230, I think, something like that. And then once it was trashed, luckily, the insurance came to the party and they fixed it all up.
So you got a free reno out of it?
I wouldn't say that.
I would. Sounds like it.
You know, the insurance company did what they were supposed to do. That's all I can say.
That's what you're paying them for, I guess.
Yeah, and it wasn't like I deliberately put in a particularly bad tenant, given the circumstances, but it just happened that way. And it's, it worked out okay in the end. So sometimes a bad thing can turn into a good thing. That's all I can say.
I wasn't looking at it so much from the lemons to lemonade. I was looking at it more so from the fact of, I can already tell the comments are going to be, have you even been to Corio? Have you even been to Norlane? Like, have you, like... Yes, that is the answer to both of those as well. But it's more so about pointing out that places that you might personally not want to live don't necessarily make bad investments.
We talked about this so much.
But I feel like it needs to be said again because you don't read the comments as much as I do, Simon.
I don't read the comments at all.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Like, it's never about what you want to live. And it's not coming from a place of arrogance, right? We're not all living in ivory towers and we're kind of buying in, the sort of lower class areas, so to speak. But everyone has different expectations of their lifestyle. Everyone has different. I'm sure there are tons of extremely wealthy people that live in Geelong, that live in Corio and live in Norlane even, right? But they just, maybe it's a lifestyle choice, maybe it's a convenience choice, maybe because they're used to that area. Who knows, right? At the end of the day, right? So, and then some people like living in old houses. Some don't like living in new houses. Some don't like the shiny brand new factor either. Some might have sentimental value. Like, there's so many variables. You should never ever use your own comfort zone or your own expectations to determine whether a house is suitable or livable or investable or acceptable or anything like that, right? Right down to from, how old it is or how ugly it looks, to the color of the internal walls, It's just completely remove yourself from that mindset and it'll make investing a lot easier, I promise you.
I always think of it as, imagine someone that lives on like Park Avenue in Manhattan coming to look at your house where you live. Do you think they might look at it and be like, I wouldn't live here. This is terrible. But you may have shut the lights out as an investment. It might be the best thing you've ever purchased. But it's the comparison that is the thing that's actually going to keep you from what could potentially change your life.
Yeah, I think so. And look, I mean, to be fair, if anyone who lived in Park, maybe I shouldn't say this.
I'm interested. What? I don't think we've got too many Park Avenue listeners, man. You're probably good.
Nah, but, look, in fairness, the house I live in is pretty nice at the moment. So I'm just saying anyone who lives in Park Avenue that came to my house might like it. They might want to swap.
You're getting a crane to put your spa in from the conversation I had before we started.
Yeah, a crane that's like, industrial grade. You can't get over
It's got to get over the turret.
Yeah, exactly. The moat. But yeah, no, it's such a big hurdle for most people mentally. And look, I had this hurdle initially. I didn't grow up, I didn't live in fancy places, but when you're accustomed to a certain way of living, you kind of set that as like your
benchmark.
Your benchmark.
Yeah.
And just don't look at it at all.
And it's the danger of assuming others do too.
Yeah, 100%. And then you got vacancy rates, Corio, Norlane, and you've got the growth rate, which I think is really important. Like the 3-month growth rate in Corio and Norlane as of mid-ish December 2025 has been 2.15%, right? Nothing to shout about, if I'm honest. But the 12-month growth rate between Corio and Norlane has been 4.8%. So in the past 3 months, it's grown more or less, around more or less 50% of what the 12-month growth rate was.
So it's starting.
I think the tide is turning. I think that tide was sort of triggered a lot by the first home owners grant that came in October 1st.
Yep.
But, the trends we're seeing on the ground in real time is that it's just starting to become a lot more owner-occupier.
All right, man, we've gone through several areas. We've been talking about South Australia, Undervalued. We're looking at Ongaparinga. We're talking around Perth. You're looking around that sort of Butler, Yanchep. You're looking at Alkimos. Over in Victoria, you're going down to Geelong. More specifically, we're looking at Norlane, Corio. Is there, you got one more for me? Because I know we're already probably running over time.
Look, I want to bring it back to Perth.
Back to Perth.
I just love it.
Okay.
I love Perth. What can I say? The opposite side to Yanchep and Alkimos and Eglinton and all those areas that we just talked about is an area called Secret Harbour.
Secret Harbour.
Secret
Should we be
Harbour
talking about it?
/ Golden Bay. We are now. It's no secret anymore. It's just going to be called Harbour soon. But yeah.
These are good puns. Come for the real estate, stay for the jokes, guys.
Secret Harbour and Golden Bay. Golden Harbour, Secret Bay, who knows? So slightly south of Rockingham, by the beach, golf courses. Very nice, established area. You drive through these areas, you go through the areas, there's zero signs of like, this is rough, this is low socio, nothing like that.
Is it like well hidden rough, or are you just talking about like
no,
it's just
it just feels, it just looks and feels and smells and everything is just like a premium kind of area.
What does premium smell like?
I don't know. It kind of smells like Secret Harbour.
Okay. I just said cheesecake.
Cheesecake?
Yeah, man.
Really?
Went to a nice hotel. It smells like cheesecake.
I don't know. Maybe more like Wagyu steak. Anyway, Secret Harbour, Golden Bay, 700, I mean, even 800 grand for some of these houses. But bearing in mind that the characteristics of Secret Harbour in particular is they're fairly nice houses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 4 beds, decent sized blocks, newish kind of properties.
Are we talking like a Point Cook kind of comparison?
Yes, but next to a really nice beach.
Okay.
Yeah, so really, really nice beaches. The golf course apparently is like world renowned. I don't play golf, so I don't know anything about it. But
for people that do it special.
Yeah, it's apparently special. But yeah, I think that's an area definitely to look out for. I'm consistently surprised that, like, if I look at other parts of Perth that has moved, and the prices that some of the Perth suburbs are at now compared to Secret Harbour and Golden Bay, I think there's a big potential there.
Yeah, okay. So tell me about the numbers on this place. What are you looking at for like a standard house?
Well, I think it's significantly undervalued, and I think the prices. But yeah, look, I mean, we're buying houses in Secret Harbour for around about the 700 to 800K mark. 4-bedroom houses, not crappy 3-bedroom, 1 bathroom, 1 garage, fibro houses either. They're 4-bedroom brick, 10, 15 years old, 20 years old type properties, 200 square meter size houses as well, like decent properties.
How far are we talking from the city again? Like from Perth?
Comparatively, it's not close.
Mm-hmm.
They're about 60 Ks away from Perth. But
okay.
Bear in mind, in Perth, and I mentioned this before in previous episodes as well, the people that choose to live in Perth are looking for areas that are a little bit further away. It's kind of like they want to be there because they're far enough away, but close enough to be a part of it. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, so but you're getting on a freeway though, aren't you? 60 Ks, like it's because I look at it the same way as like Mount Barker and actually more so Murray Bridge. Murray Bridge is like 70 Ks from Adelaide, but you're on a freeway the whole way. So you're back in Adelaide in like 35, 45 minutes, depending on traffic.
100%. Yeah. So I mean, you're about 40 minutes away to the Perth CBD.
Okay.
If you're driving without traffic, and there is no real traffic in Perth.
Well, yeah, it's Perth.
So, well, not yet anyway. But yeah, look, it seems like it's far away, but like I said before, and like I keep saying, the culture in Perth is that people do choose to live further away specifically, like unless you're extremely wealthy and, all that kind of stuff. But if you're I think a lot of people want to live in areas like Secret Harbour because they get that sort of dual lifestyle, but the less stress and all that kind of stuff. It's always like they're going on a holiday every time they go home.
All right, I got an opinion on something. If you had to pick one, let's say they were all the same deal. They were all 100 grand undervalued. They were all the same yield. They were all the same type of property. And you could either pick a Norlane, a Golden Bay, an Ongaparinga, like a Morphett Vale. Which one are you picking?
Isn't the whole point of this recording so that I can pick multiple suburbs? I mean, quite literally, I will be agnostic to everything.
Expand on that.
I don't know. Like if a good...
I mean, there must be some kind of a preference. This is literally what people are listening for because you've got the expertise, you've got the runs on the board, you've got the research. This
is what I tell to investors as well. Like, it's hard for me to say because I genuinely believe that all of these suburbs are going to grow almost equally in the short term and the long term.
Okay.
Right. And coming back to the unemotional thing, I don't care. I don't care if I have 10 houses in Secret Harbour or 10 houses in Morphett or 10 houses in Geelong or 10 houses in anywhere that I've just mentioned, right? My goal is to have 10 in all of those suburbs. So whatever house I'm buying next should allow me to buy more and more and more, wherever they are. I think that's the answer to your question.
So the answer is, I don't care.
The answer is I don't care. I think they're all going to grow. I think they're all going to perform very well. And by the way, this is just a small number of what I think the hotspots are in 2026. I think there are dozens and dozens more. But, you know, for the purpose of keeping it within a certain time frame, you know, these are the ones that I've kind of chosen to talk about.
All right, Simon. I want to know your action step.
My action step?
Someone's on the train
catch
right
a
now.
plane in about
an
hour a bit. That's my next action step.
No, I got a group call to jump on as well. But I want to know if someone's listening to this, they're a younger investor, they're at 0 wanting to get to 1, they're at 3 wanting to get to 4, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They're at the earliest stages. What's the action step that they can pull out the headphones right now and get to work to walk down this path?
Oh man, honestly, the action step is just to take action. I know that sounds very cliche, and that's what everyone says.
Mm-hmm.
You know, get your finances in check, find out what your borrowing power is. Don't try and overanalyze. Don't have your picks. You know, I know we're picking suburbs, picking hotspots, but try and stay away from that. Focus on the broad fundamentals. I think that's super important. The theme of everything we've talked about has always been the same: gentrification, up and coming, population growth, scarcity, lifestyle, affordability. We didn't really brush on this much, but also cash flow. Just make sure all those boxes are ticked and go for it.
So the action step is, I'm here and there. Talk to your broker. It's an action list, really. Talk to your broker. Make sure you've got your finance approved.
Yeah.
Pick locations that are set, but then don't obsess over the location too much. Obsess over the deal, and is it going to get you into the next one?
Correct.
Simon Loo,
Uh-huh.
I've asked you several times what your favorite pizza is. Now, I know you just got back from Lake Como.
Yes.
I want to ask you then, instead of what's your favorite pizza, you had a nonna, a proper nonna, actually make you food, Italian dishes, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad that's the direction we're headed.
Yeah. What else did you do with nonna?
Yeah, I know. Okay. Yeah, I can take that. Go on.
What was your favorite authentic Italian food when you were over there, man?
Lasagna, man. Like, I know that sounds really stupid and broad, but there was this particular place that I had this lasagna. It was unlike any other lasagna I've ever had in my entire life. It was so, the layers were so thin and delicate. I couldn't even count it.
It's like filo pastry kind of thing?
No, it's not even. Come on, man. That's a disrespect to Nonna.
What? I wasn't there.
It's almost like paper thin wafers.
Yeah, that's what filo pastry's
it's
like.
ridiculously, and it was like so. Oh man, bellissimo! It was great. It was so good. But yeah, no, that was my and the tomatoes there.
Yeah,
the tomatoes are like
actually taste like tomatoes.
Pure raw tomato, maybe with a bit of olive oil, and it's just like it's sweet. It's like candy.
It's not all the genetically modified crap.
No,
here.
it's like I don't even know how they do it, but they do it well. So,
apparently, it's the same with like the bread and the pasta. Even I've talked to people that have got like gluten intolerance issues, and then they go to Italy. Yeah. They're fine. It's like all the crap that we put in.
It's just so tasty that they tolerate it. So what becomes intolerant becomes tolerable. But yeah, look. I mean, I know we're sidetracking, but Italians, they just do like the raw ingredients so well. They don't have to dress it up with tons of seasoning and all this kind of stuff. I think just the raw food and the raw stuff that they put in is just so good.
It's what puttanesca translates to, I'm pretty sure. It's very few ingredients.
Sorry, excuse me. What was
puttanesca.
That sounds offensive.
It's a dish. I ordered the puttanesca.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
That sounds even more offensive now that you put that Italian twang on it.
I hope I'm saying the right thing.
Pretty sure that's a swear word.
I'm
but
pretty
anyway.
tired. But yeah.
Tell us in the comments, guys.
Mate, look, as always, if you want to add the rest of the list, click the link. You know what to do. Download the whole thing. There's more to it. We've touched the edges of like 4 or 5 areas on this. But Simon, as always, man, thank you so much for your time jumping on the show. I know that you've pointed a lot of people in the direction of some areas that are set for some serious growth over 2026, man. Any final words of wisdom you want to wrap things up with?
Time will tell.
Inspiring.
That's it. Time will tell.
Simon Loo, thank you
I need
very
some
much.
lasagna now.
Thank you for your time, man.
Great to be here.